Today is Friday, February 13th, Friday the 13th. Didn't know that. 2015, and this discussion will be on the upcoming funding of the Department of Homeland Security. Now, a couple months ago, I don't know when it was. Well, let's just get this real quick. So, today's Friday. Congress is out of session. They're not coming back this Tuesday. They're coming back the following Tuesday, which only gives them 4 working days until the Department of Homeland Security loses all of its funding. Now, even though it loses all of its funding, most of the people will still be working, but you don't want to have people who are protecting us, who are guarding the borders, who are guarding the planes, etc., not getting paid. So this is a big issue, and this all started back around November, if I remember correctly, when they wanted to fund the government up until next September. And the Republicans, mostly the Tea Party people, the 30, 40, or 50, that would absolutely not vote for the Department of Homeland Security because they wanted to cut out anything that would, they wanted to cut out President Obama's immigration thing, where he basically indicated that people could get green cards who were parents of people who had been born in the United States. So basically they wanted to cut that out. They didn't want that to happen, and basically they wanted to show their hatred of people of color by sending anybody that was a parent of someone who was United States citizens back to their home country. That's basically what it came down to. So they wanted to cut all that out. But the Republicans, who were just newly, even though they hadn't come into the majority, had been elected to the majority, in the election of 2014, and they needed to prove that they were some serious players, that they were the big boys, that they could actually do some type of governing, and they indicated that they would not be a shutdown of the government. So they basically conned the Tea Party people. I don't remember how they did that, but offhand, basically saying, we're going to have much greater numbers next year. We'll just do an add-on to let it go for about 3 months, and then we'll take care of it then. And so that time has come. And what has basically happened? So basically, the House has decided that not only, now they went after 2 areas. They went after the most recent one that Obama did in terms of an executive order, in terms of immigration and immigrants. And they also wanted to rescind one from back in 2011. Can't remember what that one is offhand, if I can't quite grasp it right now. But basically, again, they wanted to stick it to Obama, and they basically wanted to stick it to people of color. Because I'll try and get to that in a minute. So they did that, and they passed it. They sent it to the Senate. Mitch McConnell has brought it up 3 times, I believe. It's been voted down 3 times in the sense that the Democrats are going to filibuster, and they need to have at least 60 votes for it to pass or to go to the next authorization part, and that hasn't happened. And so basically, they've taken a vacation. They got to come back, and in 4 days, they got to do the whole thing. Now, Boehner has basically told McConnell he better do what he's supposed to do. That if you really want to know how government runs, you can go buy a little booklet over in the bookstore by the Congress, and it'll tell you how Congress runs, and this is how you pass a bill, and this is how the Senate needs to pass a bill. Basically saying, we're not going to change anything that we have in it. We want people of color to lose their parents, etc. The Senate is basically saying we can't do anything more. So some of the more enlightened Tea Party types, the more conservative types, are basically indicating that they should change the filibuster rule, which the Senate has indicated that it hasn't happened. Now, we know one other thing. We know that this would pass the House if it was a clean funding bill that had nothing to do with immigration, just providing enough money for the Department of Homeland Security until, let's say, September of this year. That could pass easily, very easily, if it was brought to the House floor, because all the Democrats would vote for it. But the Republicans have their old thing, which is they're not going to bring something to the floor of the House unless it can be approved by a majority of the majority, meaning that the majority in the House has to approve of the whole thing. And it doesn't appear as if that's going to happen. One situation would be is that Boehner will snuff his nose at the conservative types and just pass it. The thing that I wanted to bring up is that when you talk to Republicans in general, they would indicate very clearly that let's just pass this, and let's move on, and let's get some type of a full-scale immigration reform covered, meaning not just the borders, but everything. And the Tea Parties don't want that. Xenophobic, whatever you want to call them, they don't want that. But a majority of Republicans do. And when you take Obama's name out of immigration reform as to what sounds reasonable, they agree in numbers above 60%, I believe, Republicans and independents, and even above that is Democrats. So you have almost, it's basically a two-thirds majority of the American people for comprehensive immigration reform, but it's being held up by that 30, 40, or 50 people in the House. And Boehner has his hands full because he might lose his speakership if he brings it up that way, so he's got to cover his base. McConnell really can't do anything about it, and even if they do, even if the Senate did pass a filibuster reform, and they passed it, and they passed the House bill and sent it to Obama, Obama would veto it, and they don't have the 67 votes to override the veto, and I don't believe that the House would have enough votes to override the veto. So they sort of painted themselves in the corner by basically also indicating that there would not be a shutdown of the government. And so this is a conundrum, a quandary that they found themselves in that they don't really know how to get out of. Now, the other thing that I want to bring up that's in reference to this at all. Now, remember, as I indicated, that what this basically says, the first part of it is Obama's executive order in 2014, basically indicating that people who had children who were American citizens who were here in the United States illegally could get green cards. They could only have it for 3 years, and of course, blah, blah, blah. And of course, no one wants that. But in the Latino community, this is very big. They want their say. They want to have comprehensive immigration reform. They're not against some of the things that have been proposed in terms of actually even a 10-year plan to become full-fledged citizens. But what they are against is sending people back and continuing to send people back and breaking up families. And remember, Obama, by this time last year, or maybe even the year before, had sent back more people than Bush had in his entire time. So Obama's not negligent in sending people back. Of course, the right doesn't want to acknowledge that at all, and the right's not willing to fund more money into the Department of Homeland Security so that they can send more people back. But in the immigrant community, in the Latino community, they want comprehensive immigration reform. They want families to stay together. They want to be brought into the light. And of course, many studies have shown when you bring them into the light and they get their green cards and they pay their taxes and they get car insurance and all that other kind of stuff and they get medical insurance, that all helps the economy. That all helps the economy. It helps the tax base. Everything is enhanced by all of this. But what we have is basically 30, 40, 50 Republicans who are in very strong white districts because they're the gerrymandering, who are basically saying, we don't want this. Now, I want to bring just up another little part here. I know how these guys think, all right? They're all jacked up. Ain't no way we're going to let this immigration reform. They have nothing to worry about in their home districts. They're going to get reelected. The worst thing they could do is come out for some type of comprehensive immigration reform because they're scared that someone's going to go after them on the right and say, no, I'm going to be more xenophobic than you. I'm going to get rid of them all. They're very comfortable with all this, and in their own little minds, they go to their offices on the House. All the people that come in, that want stuff from them are people who are just like them. They get on the plane, mostly white people. They go back to their home districts, mostly white people. They talk to their constituents in their areas, mostly white people. People who want something from the government in their territory, in their areas, mostly white people. They don't see this as a big thing, and they're really thinking that this is rule of law. This is the way it needs to be. We need to be true to rule of law, blah, blah, blah. They're willing to fight for this. They're willing to shut the government down for this. They're willing to sit this whole thing out. They're willing for for us not to be able to, we know that we're going to keep everything open from the Department of Homeland Security, but in the end, they're going to lose. Somehow they're going to lose. Can't say exactly how they're going to lose, but they're going to lose. And the thing is that it's not going to help them with the Latino community in any way, shape, or form.